This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. Chapter 14 of the Fires of Heaven, Meetings, and our symbol is the Dream Tel'aran'rhiod, the ring. The effects of the ring Tel'aran'rhiod did not startle Nynaeve anymore. She was in the place she had been thinking of when sleep closed in, the great chamber in Tyr called the Heart of the Stone, within the massive fortress called the Stone of Tyr. The gilded stand lamps were unlit, but pale light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, to simply be all around her, fading into dim shadows in the distance. At least it was not hot. It never seemed hot or cold in Tel'aran'rhiod. Huge red stone columns ran off in every direction, the vaulted dome far above lost in dim shadows along with more golden lamps hanging on golden chains. The pale floor stones beneath her feet were worn. The High Lords of Tyr had come to this chamber, in the waking world, of course, only when their law and custom demanded. But they had come ever since the breaking of the world. Centered beneath the dome was Callandor, apparently a glittering sword made of crystal, driven half its length into the stone of the floor, just as Rand had left it. She did not go near Callandor. Rand claimed to have woven traps around it with Saidin, traps that no woman could see. She expected they would be nasty. The best of men could be vicious when they tried to be devious. Nasty and just as primed for a woman as for the man who might use that sa'angreal. He had meant to guard it against those in the tower, as much as the Forsaken. Aside from Rand himself, the one who touched Callandor might die, or worse. That was a fact of Tel'aran'rhiod. What was in the waking world was here too, although the reverse was not always so. The world of dreams, the unseen world, reflected the waking world, if sometimes in odd ways, and perhaps other worlds as well. Varen Sedai had told Egwene that there was a pattern woven of worlds, of the reality here and others, just as the weaving of people's lives made up the pattern of ages. Tel'aran'rhiod touched them all, yet few could enter, except accidentally, for unknowing moments during their own mundane dreams. Dangerous moments for those dreamers, though they never knew it, unless they were very unlucky. Another fact of Tel'aran'rhiod was that what happened to the dreamer here happened in the waking world, too. To die in the world of dreams was to die in fact. She had the sensation of being watched from the dimness between the columns, but it did not trouble her. It was not Moghedien. Imaginary eyes, there are no watchers. I told Elaine to ignore them, and here Moghedien would certainly do more than look. Even so, she wished she were angry enough to channel. Not that she was frightened, of course, only not angry. Not frightened at all. Nynaeve talking herself into telling herself that she's not afraid.
Yeah, I would definitely say there are watchers.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to take a second to talk about the unseen watchers that people seem to feel in Tel'aran'rhiod.
Mm-hmm. Especially in the Heart of the Stone.
Yes, especially there. I always suspected that they are being watched, but by whom or what, I don't know.
Heroes of the Horn?
Could be. In a second here, Nynaeve just starts calling out to Birgitte, and Birgitte shows up.
Right.
So we know that they can respond. They can hear their names no matter where they are, as long as you're in Tel'aran'rhiod.
Right. But then there's also, Aradia's making a point, sometimes the Force, we've seen all sorts of people step out from behind the columns. We've seen Rand step out from behind the columns. We've seen Forsaken step out from behind the columns. We've seen Heroes of the Horn step out from behind the columns.
I like that she suggests anthropologists from other worlds.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's
Why
just
not?
like, the Tel'aran'rhiod is connected to all worlds. Like, it's busy as hell in there, right? Like, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So I don't see why it couldn't be just tons and tons of people watching them. So I think the "don't worry, nobody's watching us" is sort of like a ridiculous, like, yeah, no, you're wrong. There are people
just
absolutely
lots of
watching
people are
you.
watching.
Yeah.
Tom says, for all we know, the Sharans, and I liked that because when we did River of Souls, I talked about my theory is that the kind of elder that Demandred is talking to is a dreamer. And that's how he travels from place to place. I speculated. I don't know if that's true, but he's able to travel these vast distances, and it's not traveling as we know it. And I speculated that he's just a talented dreamer that can move around.
He's able to enter Tel'aran'rhiod in the flesh and basically do what Egwene does.
Right.
Or what Perrin does.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, I like that. I don't remember you speculating that, but it's a good theory.
Yeah, I forget the terminology that the man uses. I don't even remember the name in River of Souls, but he's kind of an old sage type of character.
Right. Yeah. I think I remember you saying that. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one. That was a good catch. No, because, we don't assume, like, there's just Aiel Dreamwalkers. There's male Dreamwalkers, there's female Dreamwalkers. We have to assume, like, the talents have arisen. Just like with Doomseer, right? Like, that talent has arisen in many places and many times, not just with men.
Yeah, and people have different names and different terms for it. So the Sharans are talking about it in a totally different way. It would make sense if they were, I should say. That's what I thought. Anyway, so yeah, in a second here, Nynaeve is just standing around waiting, and she calls out to Birgitte, who shows up.
And by the way, I just want to make a point, this was before the Matrix. If you die in the Matrix, you die in real life. Yeah, I know. I've been in Tel'aran'rhiod. Don't, you're not fooling me. Just the world of dreams all over again.
The mind makes it real.
Exactly. Which, of course, that has all the same sort of issues in this that it has in that, which is does it? Does it really?
Well, Perrin and Neo both overcome
exactly
the same thing, where what do you mean, I can dodge a bullet? No, I'm saying when you're ready, you won't have to.
I just want to see Perrin put out his hand and a swarm of arrows just stop. And then have him tilt his head and watch them drop.
It's just a weave is the same moment.
Oh, totally. It would just be a fucking great reference.
In any case, Nynaeve is talking to Birgitte, and she asks if Gaidel is around. And this is really only important because Birgitte says, I haven't seen him for some time. I think the wheel has spun him out again. It always happens so. Expectation and concern both touched her voice. Yes, I think so, Aradia. I think that he was born now. If Birgitte was right, Nynaeve thinks, then somewhere in the world a boy-child had been born, a mewling babe with no knowledge of who he was, yet destined for adventures that would make new legends. And I couldn't help but think when I thought that, of course, we know Birgitte gets pushed out against her time, but that later dies, so returns to Tel'aran'rhiod, and could be spun out at exactly the right time that she was supposed to be anyway, because she always comes well after Gaidel. Gaidel's always older.
And she is born back into the pattern. She feels herself being reborn at the end of the last battle.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
No, she's like I have to go somewhere, in the world. I can feel a baby being born, and that's me. I have to go. And that's why she leaves Elaine.
Perfect, because I want everything to go perfectly for her and Gaidel.
So that being said, what does that tell us about Gaidel Cain? One, that he's not Oliver, because Oliver was born Oliver's 6 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's 6, 7, 8, something like that. But we do get a hint that he could very much be Jur Grady's son, and I think we got confirmation from that from Sanderson, that he was able to basically, when he wrote the final books, he was able to pick, or was able to give Gaidel Cain to those kids.
I like it. So Gaidel is born in the Two Rivers?
Jur Grady, I think he's an Ashaman.
Oh, I was thinking it was one of the farmers. Grady just sounded right. I didn't remember who that was. He has a son, Gadrin.
Yeah, and Gaidel. Pretty
close to Gaidel. Yeah.
He's described as a very ugly baby. Or, well, not ugly, but big mouth, the usual Jordan dog whistles for ugly baby.
His child was Sora, the woman he's bonded to?
Yep. And so that's the assumption that that kid is going to grow up to be Gaidel Cain. We have no idea where Birgitte is reborn, except maybe one of Elaine's babies. Which
someone just suggested that.
Yeah. Because then she'd be like, oh, God damn it, Birgitte. A third time you came back?
I just said goodbye. Jeez.
Right.
We see a bit about Birgitte describing how time works differently in the dream than it does in the real world, so she can't really tell how frequently Nynaeve is coming to visit her.
All right, small aside. Have you read The Belgariad, David Eddings?
No.
So in that, one of the main characters have a child, and the god basically decides to become their daughter and is reborn as their daughter, but like is reborn with the full knowledge of the god. Because apparently, like, the woman couldn't get pregnant, so the only way for her to have a child is for the god to basically become the child.
Oh, whoa.
And so she wakes up, and like when she's like 3 or 4, her dad's like figures it out, and they like have this little like, he's like, wait, you're my god, you're not my daughter.
It reminds me of the, what was it, Children of Dune? Like they're born knowing everything.
I forget which, it's the Elenium, not the Belgariad, just because I forget which ones are which, because those 4 series all are very, very similar. They're basically the same group of characters, just with different names.
Okay, well, I will remember this.
Yeah, but David Eddings, Elenium. Oh, and that's just sort of like a little subplot. It's not like a major point, but it is this whole thing where like the kid is fully conscious and a person he knows already, and that's sort of how I think of Aain'alein and Birgitte, that like if Aain'alein somehow figured out that one of her children were actually Birgitte, she'd be like, hey, you. But you know, the thing is,
Birgitte won't know.
And so I don't think that's fair. I don't honestly think that one of her daughters should be Birgitte, because then it'll be these like sort of unfair expectations, and she'll be like, all of a sudden you have this child with all the expectations on them of being Birgitte. And that's not what you want. You want to be just a child who happens to fall into greatness because that's what's required, and the pattern needs it. So I honestly, I don't think the pattern would allow Birgitte to be Elaine's daughter. But you never know. You never know. I mean, it's a story.
I mean, if neither of them knows, it shouldn't really change fate, right?
That's true. And maybe Elaine like realizes much later, like when she's older and after her daughter comes home and is like, has braided her hair and, you know, like, and is wearing a bow, has a bow and done heroic deeds. And he's like, wait a minute.
I knew someone that looked like you 20 years ago.
Yeah. But I mean, Birgitte doesn't always exactly, she dresses the same, but she doesn't always look the same, you know? They get different bodies every time, so.
I think she dresses that way because when she's in the dream, she can remember a lot of her lives, and this was one of her favorite outfits.
Totally.
Which, I mean, it sounds pretty comfortable.
Yep, sorry to derail us. Let's get back.
It's okay. There's the time thing that they talk about, the time discrepancies, and Nynaeve asks after, she just says, have you seen any of them since we last met? There was no need to say who. And Birgitte says, yes, like all of them. They're around, plotting. They're up to something.
Forsaken.
Which I think it might have been the prologue of this book. Right? Part of...
Did we get a Forsaken meeting in the beginning of this book?
I think so.
Ooh, we're starting to get it mixed up again, guys.
No, it's Gareth. It might have been like one of the early chapters. Lanfear's plan. Flipping through. I don't know. Maybe it was the end of the last book. I can't keep track of what is in which book. But Lanfear's plan with Samael, Ravine, Graendal are all sitting in the room.
It's the end of chapter 1.
Oh, okay.
Grendel, yeah, I'm scrolling through it now, where they discuss the plan. Grendel leaned forward, interested, and Samuel began to nod as she went on. Ravine reserved judgment. It might well work, and if not, he saw several ways to shape it to his advantage.
Yes, inchoate, that exactly. The whole thing's from Ravine's perspective. So they know that the Forsaken are up to something, but not what, so that's not very useful. Birgitte has not seen Moghedien, though, and the two women spend some time speculating that, kind of worried that Moghedien may have some way to hide herself, even from Birgitte, the spider. Yeah, Nynaeve asks Birgitte several times at the end of their conversation if she can please report the information that Birgitte is giving her to Egwene and the Wise Ones who may be able to do something about it, and Birgitte insists no. Like, I've already broken too many rules just by talking to you.
Oh, here's a question. When Perrin is fighting Slayer, he's able to travel with him whenever he's touching his, coat sleeve, but here, Nynaeve is holding her coat sleeve and Birgitte is able to travel without taking her along with her. And I just wonder if that's, a mistake, or if it's just Birgitte can do that because she's not traveling. She's just disappearing.
Yeah, or Nynaeve has no skill.
Yeah, well, there's that too. Maybe Nynaeve's not trying to go with her, not trying to hold to her. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think Birgitte is a special case, too.
That's yeah. Well, all the Hunters of the Horn they're given not special powers in Tel'aran'rhiod, but definitely like they're able to hide in Tel'aran'rhiod better than anyone else. Yeah. Until they start coming out to talk to folks.
This is that part I was talking about in the last chapter where Nynaeve's dress keeps on changing and she's struggling with it, and she has all the thoughts about, this dress is indecent, but it would not feel indecent if Lan was looking at her, and not just that and the other thing. Nynaeve's kind of prim, Two Rivers culture slowly being worried away by the world at large.
Yeah, she always insists stout Two Rivers wool is good enough, but then she wears silks and tight dresses, and it's pretty obvious from the way clothing fits her. Yeah,
she looks good, and she likes looking good. I get it.
Yeah, and she wears dresses to accent that. And you notice the first thing she asks Egwene about is, how's Lan?
Yes.
'Cause that's what she's thinking about. Oh, and did you see Nynaeve's lie here? It's a little bit later.
What do you mean?
Oh, and she's saying, imagine trying to feed fork root to someone who knows herbs as well as I do.
Oh, yes.
Which is like, she did, you didn't know what it was, and you got taken, and you are lying. And it takes her a while. That she struggles with that, and that's part of her character growth, is like, he's really making an effort to portray her here as a little hypocritical, childish, and a bit of someone who will lie to make herself look better, and she has to go through that growth. Really, Egwene has to basically school her a couple of times on that before she's able to really go through the growth and become someone who can admit that they can make mistakes.
Yeah, and there's a good flash of jealousy in this scene too. Egwene and Melaine show up together, and Nynaeve notices that she's very beautiful. She has this beautiful red hair and clear green eyes, and she's there near Lan. She knows that, and when Nynaeve asks after him, Melaine's like, "Oh yeah, I get why you're into him. Like he's, She compliments Lan's shoulders, hands, and eyes. And she's like, I totally get why you're into that guy. And Nynaeve's like, what do you mean you get it? Don't you look at him. I mean, she doesn't say that, but she thinks it,
She doesn't compliment his eyebrows?
No? I don't get it.
That's a Loyal always compliments Loyal gear thing. It's always like, and her beautiful eyebrows and they're long, drooping eyebrows. Yeah.
Very nice eyebrows. Okay.
Who commented on Marcus Rutherford's eyebrows on Instagram? I think someone was like, was that Harriet or was it?
Is that the actor that's?
Yeah, that's Perrin. Yeah, Harriet said she liked his eyebrows.
Now I feel like I have to Google this. These fabulous eyebrows.
Or was it Harriet or was it?
I don't know. I'm no judge of eyebrows.
It was Harriet via Maria. Okay, so I did see Maria post it, but it was Harriet who said it. Got it. Which I have to wonder if that's an inside joke between Harriet and RJ about, like, she always found him, like, if she's like, I found your eyebrows attractive.
I bet.
And he, like, wrote that in there.
They seemed like a funny couple like that. Yeah.
They totally did. And they had tons of inside jokes in these books that we know nothing about. And the more I hear stories from them, the more I'm like, yeah, there's way more inside jokes than we have any clue. Especially since he was writing the women as Harriet a bunch of the time.
Was it Nine Horse Hitch was an inside joke for the ninth horse or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, I don't even know. Again, I have to go back and research my Wheel of Time.
Meta information.
Yeah. The recordings of the notes, Wheel of Time notes panel actually has a lot of that information in it.
And I also liked here that Egwene says he's well. Egwene said he worries about whether you are safe. And Nynaeve has the thought that, he's in the Waste, which is a plenty dangerous place with Couladin and the Shaido. And he doesn't know anything about caution, that man. And he's worried about her safety, which she's so not safe. Like, she just got kidnapped, last week.
Right. No, and again, this is the contradictory. And she's saying, as she's worried about his safety, she's saying, how dare he worry about my safety?
Right.
It's like, you're worried about each other's safety. That's what you do, and you're both idiots who get into dangerous situations.
It's another double think.
Yeah, it's that total inherent contradiction in Nynaeve, which is, how dare he worry about my safety while I'm worrying about his?
Yes, Nynaeve tells them about the kidnapping incident, except for the kidnapping part. And schemes within schemes, Melaine murmured. The Great Serpent is a good sign for you, Aes Sedai, I think. Someday you may swallow yourselves by accident. Thought that was sharp.
Yeah, and if you notice here, Egwene's like, we have news ourselves, and Nynaeve's like, I could see no reason for the girl's haste. And what it is Egwene is trying to cover up the fact that she has told Melaine that she's Aes Sedai, right? Melaine saying, the Great Serpent Ring is a good sign for you, Aes Sedai, and she doesn't want Nynaeve to be like, oh no, I'm just an accepted.
Oh yeah, she does kind of cut in. I didn't really notice that.
No, she's totally trying to interrupt so they don't talk about you, Aes Sedai.
Egwene tells her Nynaeve about the changing dynamic between Moraine and Rand, which nobody in the room is cool with. And Nynaeve gives some good advice to Egwene about Rand, I think, actually, when she says, do the best you can with him. Helping him hold on to himself may be the best thing that anyone can do, for him and for the rest of the world. That produced a silence. She and Egwene certainly did not like talk about the eventuality of Rand going mad, and Melaine could not like it any better. And I feel like that touched me a bit, because I feel that when Rand gets some time to sit and especially talk with Egwene or other people from the Two Rivers, they always kind of reminisce, and, I feel like it centers him to remember that he's maybe king of the world or whatever, but he's from a dirt farm in the Two Rivers, he's just as regular as anyone else, in a way.
And that's something that the Aiel try and teach him, Nynaeve tries to teach him, Codswain tries to teach him, and it takes until the last battle when he realizes that he's really nothing special, that other people can be heroes too.
Yeah, more like a flag than I don't know what I'm trying to say. Something to rally around.
Exactly, yeah. He's a leader, but he's not the only one fighting.
Yeah, this isn't his war. It's everybody's.
Exactly. We all are fighting the Dark One. Which, if you want to get meta and go with an analogy, we're all fighting despair and demons and loneliness and giving up and wanting to just destroy it all. It's something that I think everyone struggles with sometimes, and that's what I consider the heart of the dark.
Yeah. Melaine goes into her tirade about how Nynaeve shouldn't even be here. She should be trained properly before she goes wandering around trying to track Forsaken or whatever. And Nynaeve brings up, she says, I learned how to channel by myself. I think I can do this too. She reveals...
It's like, you beat the odds when you were learning to channel.
Yeah.
Like, you got lucky.
You roll the dice and win once does not mean you're going to win the second time.
Right. This is just as dangerous. Doesn't mean, like, you suddenly are better at figuring this out. Like, you should be getting help. And I feel like the rest of the chapter is just, like, them butting heads about it.
Yeah, more or less. That's kind of the majority of the readout is them sort of arguing. Although I did like also that... we see here, and this is from Nynaeve's perspective, so she's been informed that among the Aiel there are no Wilders, and the Wise Ones are insistent about that they find every single girl that can channel anything, a trickle, and train them. So no Aiel girl ever dies from trying to learn by herself. You know the dangers of learning the power without guidance, Aes Sedai. Do not think the dangers of the dream are less. They are just as great, perhaps more. And that basically brings me right up to my readout, which I can make a little chunkier because I feel like we ripped through that. This is one of those information exchange chapters where we just say, they said this, then said this.
Right, there's a fair amount of recap, and these meetings in Tel'aran'rhiod, they're definitely like, there's some back and forth, but for the most part, it's a bit of a recap about what happened and some relationship stuff.
Yeah,
and an internal monologue.
It is super important that they have these meetings and can keep tabs on each other so they can sort of coordinate. So it makes sense, but we watched all these things happen.
How often have we said, we just want the characters to talk to each other, and here they are actually talking to each other and exchanging information and telling each other what's going on. It's fantastic.
I'm going to do the readout. I'm going to make it a little chunkier than I originally made it. just because I love Nynaeve. I am careful, Nynaeve said in a tight voice. She had not come to be lectured by the sun-haired vixen of an Aiel. I know what I am doing, Melaine. You know nothing. You were as headstrong as this one when she came to us. The wise one gave Egwene a smile that actually seemed affectionate. We tamed her excessive exuberance, and now she learns swiftly, though she does have many faults still. Egwene's pleased grin faded. Nynaeve suspected that grin was why Melaine had added the last. If you wish to wander the dream, the Aiel woman went on, come to us. We will tame your zeal as well, and teach you. I do not need taming, thank you very much, Nynaeve said with a polite smile. Aain'alein will die the day he learns you are dead. Ice stabbed into Nynaeve's heart. Aain'alein was what the Aiel called Lan. One man, it meant in the old tongue, or man alone, or man who is an entire people. Exact translations from the old tongue were often difficult. The Aiel had a great deal of respect for Lan, the man who could not give up his war with the Shadow, the enemy that had destroyed his nation. You are a dirty fighter, she muttered. Melaine quirked an eyebrow. Do we fight? If we do, then know that in battle there is only winning and losing. Rules against hurting are for games. I want your promise that you will do nothing in the dream without first asking one of us. I know Aes Sedai cannot lie, so I would hear you say it. Nynaeve gritted her teeth. The words would be easy to say. She did not have to hold to them. She was not bound by the 3 oaths, but it would be admitting that Melaine was right. She did not believe it, and she would not say it. She'll not promise, Melaine, Egwene said finally. When she gets that muley look, she wouldn't come out of the house if you showed her the roof on fire. Nynaeve spared a piece of glare for her. Muley indeed, when all she did was refuse to be pushed about like a rag doll. After a long moment, Melaine sighed. Very well, but it would be well to remember, Aes Sedai, that you were but a child in Tel'aran'rhiod. Come, Egwene, we must go. An amused wince crossed Egwene's face as the two women faded away. Abruptly, Nynaeve realized that her clothes had been changed. The wise ones knew enough of Tel'aran'rhiod to alter things about others as well as themselves. She wore a white blouse and a dark skirt, but unlike those of the women who had just gone, this stopped well short of her knees. Her shoes and stockings were gone, and her hair was divided in 2 braids, one over each ear, woven with yellow ribbons. A rag doll with a carved and painted face, sat beside her bare feet. She could hear her teeth grinding. This had happened once before, and she had pried out of Egwene that this was how the Aiel dressed little girls. In a fury, she switched back to the yellow Tarabonner silk. This time it adhered even more closely, and kicked the doll. It sailed away, vanishing in midair. That Melaine probably had her eye on Lan. That Aiel all seemed to think he was some sort of hero. The high neck became a tall lace collar, and the deep, narrow neckline showed her cleavage. If that woman so much as smiled at him, Suddenly she became aware of her fast-sinking, rapidly widening neckline, and hastily brought it back up. Not all the way, but enough that she did not have to blush. The dress had grown so tight that she could not move. She took care of that, too. She was supposed to ask permission, was she? Go begging the wise ones before doing anything? Had she not defeated Megadeon? They had been properly impressed at the time, but they seemed to have forgotten. As she could not use Birgitte to find out what was going on in the tower, perhaps there was a way she could do it herself.
Just a couple of comments as we went through that. The rules against hurting are for games is very, very true.
Yeah. I also really liked that Melaine's last try is saying, like, listen, you know this is really dangerous, and you know what it would do to Lan if you got hurt. And Nynaeve's like, oh, shit, she got me.
That's dirty. Yeah, that's dirty.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they put her in children's clothes because she's being childish. With yellow ribbons in her hair. It's very Nynaeve.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Melaine just noticed that she's partial to the color.
Yeah. Or I just wonder if she has that enough influence that, like, oh, at least they'll be yellow. That's the color she likes. Who knows?
She's wearing the yellow dress.
Or if it's just Jordan's nod to, like, yeah, she's yellow Aja.
Yeah. I like the idea that it's her mind that influences the color of the ribbons.
Me too. I like that idea.
Do we remember what Egwene's ribbons were colored? You don't have to.
I think they were blue or red. They were either blue or red.
I don't know. I'm just curious if if it means anything, or probably not. It's probably just, whatever the little girl likes or what their mom wants to put on them.
Red. Egwene's true Aja. Red. She would have been better off not bonding Egwene for fucking order.
Gwaini. I do like Angwi Gawi. Was that one of us that came up with that, or has that just been a thing that's been going on for a long time?
I think it came up with the podcast, yeah. That was definitely like one night. Yeah, it was Jesus on Twitter, yeah.
Excellent.
So we were just like trying to like Angry Gawain, and she was like, and she put them together to make it Angwi.
And Angwi is what do you call it when the letters are just rearranged? Anagram? Is that that's what I was thinking, but I'm not sure. But Angwi rearranged is Gawain. Perfect. The more we talk about it, the more I wish she had gone for the other brother. I really don't like Galad in the early on, but he redeems himself. He grows, and he becomes a really good, strong character. And, you know, we've talked about this a million times. The White Tower, if Egwene bonded Galad, she would be bonding the Captain Commander? I forget what the term is. Of the White Cloaks. Yeah. Which would have been fun, but, you know, you can't get everything you want.
Oh, if they combine Gawain and Galad into one character, it'll be the son of... Yeah, it'll be Tigraine's son. It'll be Galad. Because Gawain really doesn't serve a purpose.
He doesn't have that important of the plot. I mean, the plot of the Younglings is a cool aspect of the series that's dark.
But he doesn't have to be the leader of that.
Difficult to grapple with. But anyone can lead the Younglings, yeah. Or, I mean, you could just put Gawain in it and just take the lines away. And he's just, you know, the other brother that we know Elaine is more fond of, but they barely spend any time together in the whole series, so it hardly matters.
You can nick the Aain'alein Galad romance is really last minute. That's like, oh yeah, at the very end, they like...
Yeah, kind of cute, but whatever.
You can totally nix that and then make his relationship with Egwene instead, and yeah, Aain'alein never gets anyone to hang out with, but that's fine because she's totally fixated on Perrin the whole time. And, or, you know, she could bang somebody else. Like, she could totally find true love with some other hottie, like, just random hottie. Like, it doesn't have to be right.
Plenty of boys out there. Plenty of better boys out there.
The great thing about Wheel of Time is no matter how many people they cast, we'll always be able to do more dream casting because there's always more characters.
Yes. Had this character been in the show, it should have been played by... That's going to happen for the rest of the time.
Right. Or just like later season characters where it's like after season 1, you're going to be like, oh, when Aludra shows up, who's going to play Aludra, right? Because she's not there for a while.
Yeah. I also hope there's some, like big name people that just pop in, like, and play a really minor role or something, or a character that's important for just a little bit, you know?
Some cameos, special guest star.
Aludra's not really a great example of that because she has some really significant parts, but
no, I'm thinking more like the farmer who like drives them for a while.
Oh,
you know, someone like that who only pops in for a while.
I know who you're talking about, but I it's not popping into my head.
But then we also need, like, cameos for Michael Kramer and Kate Redding and Harriet and Brandon Sanderson. They all need to appear in scenes, at least in the background, as, like, Harriet needs to be an Aes Sedai.
That would be spectacular.
Just, like, in the background, in a scene. She doesn't have to be doing anything.
Reading a book or something. Ingtar's a great example. Someone who's only around for, like, he has a lot of role for half of the first season, you know, and then gone.
All I'm going to say is I know for a fact that Rosamund Pike has been told about our podcast recently, So I'm pretty stoked about that.
So now we're famous, just in case you didn't know.
So we're hoping she is tuning in at some point, but, probably not.
We said this a bunch when news of the show first came out, but if you guys need any help consulting on these various complicated plot lines, we got your back, dude. Got your back.
Totally.
I will move to LA for that. I don't even care.
I'll move to Prague for that.
Yeah, or whatever. I will throw some clothes in a backpack and go.
Timber will have to stay with my parents for a while. God, can you imagine Watt Spoilers live from Prague?
FML.
Live from Emmons Field.
That's a dream.
Live from the Wine Spring Inn.
I think I would get through that line. This is Watt Spoilers, live from the Wine Spring Inn, and then my heart would explode, and that would be the end of the episode.
Holy shit.
I'll have to be on sedatives the whole time.
I think there's a potential for SpoilerCon to explode when the show comes out.
Good.
As the West Coast JordanCon,
I'll know what's going to happen.
Equivalent. People are going to be looking for a place to go, and it's going to be like, oh yeah, we had this 50-person thing, we've got this community, we took a lot of our stuff from JordanCon, we're on the West Coast, we're on the opposite timeline, and yeah. I'm just saying. It has, but like everything else with this podcast, we have been sitting on a rocket full of fuel, and the prime engines have been going, and we are in the final countdown at this point to launch.
So weird.
Now, we may explode on the launch pad. That's entirely possible. As a matter of fact, that's pretty much what I expect to happen. But we could also go to the moon.
Who knows? I don't know. I try not to be attached to any future assumptions, but yeah, it's just so weird.
To Scadrial and beyond. It's
weird to think about. When we first started this podcast, we didn't really expect anyone to listen. You remember that?
No, you can go back. And we had no idea there would be a TV show.
I didn't think it was ever going to happen.
No. They've been talking about a TV show for 10 years. Red Eagle still had the rights.
Yeah.
It was all fucking legal bullshit. This was even before the lawsuit and I was
so burned out on that talk.
Winter Dragon.
And probably if you go back to early episodes, I'm sure that I said things like, because I had these thoughts a lot, the Wheel of Time is too long and complicated to ever be adapted. It probably will never be, because people will just be like, well, how about instead we do this one book thing,
Right. Well, and I always came back at you with, before Game of Thrones, I would have agreed with you.
Yeah, yeah. And, I guess you got to go back a little bit, but before Lord of the Rings, nobody cared about this stuff. Not nobody, but just us nerds, and I just thought we were always going to be this small thing on the side, but the internet, period.
Right. Well, the internet and to be honest, the Lord of the Rings movies, that trilogy became mainstream and took fantasy from people going like, oh, are those sexual fantasies? To like, oh yeah, I love fantasy too. It's just a totally different...
It made it accessible to people who may not have taken the time to, read Lord of the Rings or even Harry Potter as well. Lots of people didn't read Harry Potter until they saw the movies, and they were like, oh, this is cool. I want to read the books now.
Sure. But Harry Potter only got on screen because of Lord of the Rings was first, in my opinion. I don't know. That's a hard call. Do you think Harry Potter would have made it on screen without Lord of the Rings?
Maybe. If only because Harry Potter was huge standalone by itself.
Right. But I have to wonder if it would have had the success it had, if it would have been as well done, if you didn't have sort of this example of how high fantasy could be done well on screen first.
That's a whole thing to consider, too, that
yeah.
The more money these things make, the more money, big company like Amazon, Netflix will put into producing these things because they know people love it and will, that'll draw revenue for them.
And at this point, the money does give you a much more high fidelity product, something that sticks, where you don't have to make trade-off choices of like, do we stick with the plot or is that going to blow our budget?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, bam. Of course, if we go back to Star Wars, I mean, we're talking the 70s, created a whole new genre. I mean, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, that whole cinema blockbuster has created the impact. But really bringing it to TV and having long-form movie-quality episodes on TV. I mean, we can go back to, like, Sopranos and HBO really doing that sort of thing and really sort of setting the genre.
Super long-form story.
Super long-form, high-budget, serial story as being something you can do on TV. And, you know, to be honest, what do I think changed? Not producers, not storytellers. Technology changed. We had DVDs, and all of a sudden you could go back and for the first time ever, you could binge a show. And that changed the way shows were produced. It took us from a world of Friends to a world of Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad and, you know, like serious progression in your stories on TV.
Yeah.
Instead of serial shit. Because before there was DVDs, you couldn't rely on your audience to have seen the previous episodes.
Right. You can't tell an 8-hour story in the same way.
Anyway, technology has changed the way we consume media, and that combined with good CGI that's almost indistinguishable from real life at this point in an affordable way has created a world where the Wheel of Time, the perfect environment is now here to tell the Wheel of Time. We love long-form TV stories, and it's possible to do the special effects in an affordable way.
Yeah. Wow, I'm surprised here. I'm just watching the conversation in Discord. A surprising number of people haven't read Harry Potter. But, you know...
Go remedy that. Like, that's just, like, it's not for kids.
You'll fly
it's
through
for
it.
Everybody. Go read it. Yeah. You can read the first book in a sitting.
I read it because my grandpa brought me a copy, like read an article in the newspaper about this super popular book, and he realized Harry was the same age as me. Like when I don't remember exactly, but close. Harry was pretty close in age to me. And oh wait, literally? Well, then I didn't find out about Harry Potter. Talir just said Harry was born in 1980. So no, I mean
yeah. So he's the same age as me because I was born in 81.
Close enough. I was born in 87. Yeah, so I enjoyed it at the time, and then that was one of the series where I waited for a really long time because I read the first book I think when I was like 12 or something, and the last book I think came out when I was like 19 or 20. I can't remember exactly, and it was approximately along the right. You know, I was very close in age to Harry while I was reading the books.
Whereas I feel like I guess I was the same age as Harry, but I don't know. I was older than the target audience, and I was reading everything that was fantasy that came out. And at the time, I was lifeguarding, and so it came out in the summer, and I was at the pool, and all of the kids at the pool, every pool rat was carrying around a copy of Harry Potter.
I remember that.
And so I was like, someone eventually handed me a copy, and because I was a lifeguard, I was able to read it at work. Because we did like half an hour on the stand, an hour off, half an hour on the stand, half an hour at the desk, and then a half an hour essentially in the shade.
Yeah.
And so I could read for an hour out of the hour and a half. When I was at the desk and when I was on break, I could actually be reading, which was awesome for the job. But so I blew through Harry Potter every summer whenever they'd come out all in the summer, and I'd just get a copy and blow through them when they came out. And sometimes I could read just because the pool was empty. So even though like I was technically on duty, I could be on the stand with a book.
Oh, I did not know this, guys. I guess probably the books blew up a good deal after they were released. Because I think I got introduced to the series like, I don't know, I want to say around maybe 99 or something. I don't really remember.
But it is it's weird that you can say Harry was born in 1980, but the books were coming out. You know, he was a teenager in 2000.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like this weird, like, time dilation where the books were technically coming out years after the time in which they were set. So even though I was Harry's age, technically, because we were born at the same time, I was 18 when he was basically, like, 13.
Yeah.
So that makes sense, because the books were coming out and you were that age, even though he was the age of Harry Potter, because they were set in an earlier, like 10 years earlier.
Oh, yeah, that does make sense.
And the final book the final three books are extremely adult. They are dark fiction in some ways. There's a few little bits at the end that, like, there's a happy ending that really you can say is just the result of more of a author hanging on to her characters. Anyway, that's a whole nother discussion about how she ended her series, and I think that J.K. Rowling became way too attached to her characters and wasn't willing to kill some of the characters that she should have. But that's a whole different thing.
I remember I had a theory before the final book came out that Harry Potter was the final Horcrux.
He is.
I thought he was going to have to destroy himself.
Yeah, he, like, dies and comes back. That's the whole thing, is, like, he shouldn't have come back. I will never be able to do a Harry Potter spoilers podcast because her logic is too inconsistent. The Time Turners just ruin everything.
There's probably 10,000 Harry Potter podcasts already anyway.
And like, the market's flooded. Like, we'll never do a Harry Potter podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?